on the countdown, and we are live.
I see
we
that.
have
That's
internet.
Awesome. Yeah, we have internet. Joys of technology, right?
It is. Thanks for joining me today, Justin. Want to just send out a welcome to anybody that's going to be tuning in to this show, whether it's live or in the future. And I just want to start off by saying, what's up? Like, who are you, Justin? How did we meet? I want to kind of talk about that conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, part of the conversation we're going to have today is just about how crazy it is, how social media links people up, right? Like whether it be through Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, you know, when you follow different people or you're interested in marketing and advertising, like I know you are super passionate about, it leads you down certain paths. You know, as far as myself, I never told you this actually in our interactions. I come from a marketing and advertising background. Your parents were in the food industry for a long time. I know with the Snappy Stop, I've been watching that through and through. I used to manage 4 restaurants actually here locally in London. I did that for about 12 years. So came from the food service industry, got into real estate. We'll kind of get into that story a little bit later, but had kind of a similar path as you, where just meeting the right people or, you know, walking into the right situations led me to a place where, you know, I have free run of a career in real estate, and I'm picking and choosing my niches based off what I find to be entertaining or fun, right? And you find that a lot of times that leads back to things you've done in your past, you know, things that your parents have ingrained in you, you know, watching businesses grow. Our kind of relationship just started off Snapchat purely, right? Like I saw what you were doing day to day and I laughed because a lot of it is what I do day to day. Like just walking into empty strip malls, you know, seeing potential for the next 5 or 10 years of what could be, and then working with tenants to get them into those spaces and just change the face of your city. So, you know, as far as the Google Hangout goes, I think we started this just so we can have a little bit more of an in-depth discourse to add to our day-to-day. Because I know we follow each other on Snapchat and Twitter, Instagram, everywhere else. So it's nice to add a little bit more in-depth context to our day-to-days and then cement that relationship so that in the long term, hey, if I have somebody here that's looking to relocate to the States, maybe I push them to Rochester and I help you fill an area of the city that, you know, needs that tenant that I have here and vice versa, right? Like, do you know much about London, Ontario?
No, actually don't know anything at all other than what you've shared on Snapchat. It looks like a really cool city. I will say that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, right? So a lot of people, if you Google London, Ontario, there's a couple things I like to point out. And that's, I guess, the first thing we'll go over. I'll explain my market a little bit. And I really want to know about Rochester. London was supposed to be the capital of Canada. So that's why it's actually named after London, England. The Thames River, basically, if you look at a map, the Thames River comes in from the east coast of Canada, goes right through London. And then it's an artery road that continues on to the rest of Canada. But we also link up to Sarnia and Windsor, which both go to Michigan. So I told you I was in Niagara Falls a couple of weeks ago for a conference. That's only an hour and a half away. I can hop over to Michigan in about an hour and a half. I can go to Chicago in about 6 hours. So location-wise, we're an interesting city in the fact that we're an access point for pretty much everything. Another fun fact about London was we're a test town. So when McDonald's wants to launch a new McRib or McGriddle, we actually get it before anybody else. And the reason we get it is we have about 500,000 people here. So we have a really, really good spread of demographics across our city. But if you look at a map, we're isolated. So we're too far from any metropolitan city that people here won't go to Toronto to get a burger or a pair of shoes. They're going to stay here locally. So all the big companies like Wendy's, when they redid their franchises and invested millions in the new facade, they tested it in 3 or 4 different areas of our city to see the reaction from the consumers and whether or not they were going to move forward with it. Awesome. So yeah, it's pretty funny. And we also have, like, manufacturing wise, we have a big manufacturing sector. We account for, I believe, about $5 billion worth of production nationally. We have a big medical sector too. So we have 4 hospitals. 2 of them are world class. I know you guys have the Mayo Clinic down there, right?
Right.
So we actually have University Hospital and we have Victoria Hospital. We fly in doctors from Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic to do research at our hospitals just because it's always been a hub for a lot of AIDS and cancer research.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you look at our map. I could kind of show you, if you look at London on a map, we're trapped between two of the Great Lakes. So on the north end, we have Lake Huron. On the south end, we have Lake Erie. We got beaches all along those two coasts. So you'll have a split group of people. Half of them are like, they're the Lake Erie diehards. They're all about Port Stanley. That's their beach. And then you have the other half that they love Grand Bend. They like the Huron coast, which has like, you know, lots of conservation land, beautiful beaches like Grand Bend. And then it goes all the way up the coast to Bayfield, Goderich, Kincardine, Collingwood, which is, you know, mountains and stuff like that. It's an interesting place to live as far as like the overall area that we live in.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll share a little bit of Rochester, Minnesota.
Yeah.
It is in southeast Minnesota, so we're not Minneapolis, Twin Cities. We're about an hour and a half just south of Minneapolis, where the capital is, in St. Paul, right in that area. And we're really well known for the Mayo Clinic. So we're a city of approximately 120,000 plus or minus. We see over 1 million visitors a year thanks to the Mayo Clinic. I was born and raised here in Rochester, and for me, it's always been very much a small city. So I explain to a lot of people, you know, expect this to be like even smaller cities related to Minnesota, where you know everybody. You walk around, you see people you know on a daily basis. You go to the grocery store, you see people you know. It still has that very small city feel. The thing that is taking it a little bit over and above the small city feel is the Mayo Clinic, because of how many visitors that come here from all over the world. We have people that come from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, China. Mayo has relationships throughout the world, and they all come to this little hub of Rochester, Minnesota. So Rochester has an airport because of Mayo Clinic. Rochester has the whole economy really feeds off of Mayo Clinic. And I can't say I would be here today where I'm at related to business without Mayo, just because of the growth that they're bringing to the city, the growth they brought to the city, and what the future is going to bring. We're fairly close to like Chicago as well, so you can drive to Chicago on a weekend if you want to. There's a train that leaves from Winona, Minnesota, which is approximately 40 miles. It would be just east of here. So I would say Rochester in general, just a great family city, really well known for the Mayo, and it's a niche in itself related to where it sits on the global map and what's happening in this local economy. I'll dive into it real quick. We have this large initiative called Destination Medical Center that was a partnership with the city of Rochester, Mayo Clinic, the state of Minnesota, to really put Mayo on the map long term, because the general consensus is people come here to Mayo and they have excellent care, and it's the best in the entire world. But when they step out of the Mayo Clinic, the city of Rochester doesn't have too much. I think it was maybe the CEO or whoever I watched at one point, and they said, we don't have mountains and we don't have oceans. So how do we make our city somewhat of a destination so people don't just view it as the Mayo Clinic's great, but our city sucks? So that's what we're working on, and we're starting to see steps towards that bright future. And there's also, I feel like, a switch in thinking in Mayo Clinic from what I'm seeing outside looking in, of just this entrepreneurial spirit of, we got to go back to what we knew when we were starting off in the medical world, of we didn't know much and we really thought outside of the box, and that put us on the map. And I think they're starting to go back to those roots, and you're seeing that through bioscience collaborations, health tech type relationships. And it's cool to see in this small city, because if we can plug ourselves into that on a global map, like, we're going to be even bigger than we are today. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm going to continue to stay here in Rochester, Minnesota.
I got a question for you. So how does the Mayo Clinic, from a, you know, I don't know the structure of the ownership, right? Like the board of directors or whoever runs it, how well do they integrate, do you find, with the city? Like, some of the problems, like with the University of Western Ontario, some of the hospitals we have here, sometimes they can act like an island unto themselves, where, you know, they need to integrate a little bit more into the city. And there's people like you and me who are working day to day to kind of foster those relationships. Like, what's the framework of the relationship between the Mayo Clinic and Rochester?
I got to be careful, because if Mother Mayo's watching, you never know what they're going to say.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Right. No, and I'll be honest with you. I'll be transparent, but it's funny that thought goes through my mind because I'll give you a real life example. I tweeted something from my dad's burger restaurant, Snappy Stop, and it said, "A burger a day keeps the doctor away," says Mayo Clinic. I got an email like the next day from marketing at Mayo Clinic. Please remove that tweet. So,
for sure.
But no, Mayo Clinic in general, I think that this is my experience. So I grew up here. I didn't know squat about the Mayo Clinic just because I'm not sick. My family wasn't sick. Like I didn't need to know anything about the Mayo Clinic. I didn't fortunately have anybody in my family that was sick going to Mayo. So I've kind of just grew up not knowing anything about it. As I got into commercial real estate and started to involve myself in the city and the framework of what the city is, I recognized that Mayo Clinic is somewhat integrated into the city, but they have a lot of opportunity to become even more integrated. And it's only going to help businesses. It's only going to help employees. It's only going to help them. It's only going to help visitors. And so that's the switch that I see getting turned on. It's tough. Like it's not an easy switch to just turn on just for the fact they haven't necessarily said, we're going to be transparent in our decisions moving forward related to how we want to do development in the city and allow the city or people of the city to kind of be a part of that conversation. They've just done what they've wanted to do, in my opinion, and not looked at it that way. Now they're coming back and saying, what do you think our city should look like? How do we design it so it's not only a destination outside of if you're sick, but how do we design it so it's a healthy city? How do we design it so it's an innovative city? How do we design it so we can keep young professionals in our city? And that's the switch they're starting to turn. But in the past, I don't think they've necessarily fostered that vision, and that's part of Destination Medical Centers. They know they need to do that in order to make this the city that it can become and reach its highest potential. So
yeah, and I think, looking at it from a business perspective, like you and I deal with a lot of people who are running businesses, there's only so much time and effort you can devote to any one thing, right? So if you're focused on being the best in the world when it comes to medical support, a lot of times your vision has to be so focused on the development of your systems and processes internally, there's not enough hours in the day to look outwardly at, what's going on around you. But it sounds like it's heading in a direction where, if people are spending millions developing in and around the hospital, it seems like they're realizing, okay, well, maybe through conversations, we can direct that to the best route and work together so that there can be an infrastructure to support what we do. Because when it comes down to it, all the people that are in the bricks and mortar, they all live in Rochester. I'm assuming a large majority of them, I'm sure, at the Mayo Clinic live in the community, right? So, the actual lifeblood of the hospital, if they're living happier, more satisfied lives, not saying that they're not at all, I'm sure they're very happy, the happier they are, the quicker everything's going to grow at Mayo. And it creates an interesting dynamic. Like, just to give you a little bit of contrast in our city, and again, because this is live, I want to be careful about what I say, but we've had city councils in the past that have been a little slower moving and haven't really cared about what the city has to say about the choices that are being made. And we all know, when you have developers and builders, and this is going to touch on one point that we had talked about mentioning, you got builders and developers investing millions into areas of the city. You got to make it attractive for them to do that in order for there to be a balance, right? Like it's simple economics that if the numbers work, the numbers work. And if they don't, they don't. But if you lose a potential development, it can impact the city over the next 10 or 20 years. Like you were mentioning the Holiday Inn, I believe, and that's a big one, right? Like, and you get something like that.
Right.
Yeah. You lose something like that, you can be damn sure all their competitors know that that's not going there anymore. So maybe, 3 or 4 other locations that were looking to be in a competitive area are now dialing back a little bit, right? So I'm just going to touch on, this is the London plan. So I'll actually send you a PDF copy of this because we're known as a really big, small town. So in Ontario, we're the little guys, right? Like we're with Toronto, Windsor, there's bigger cities than us. Everybody knows everybody here. And the London plan was created with a lot of input from the businesses and the people like you and me that are in and around the city for the next 20 years of, okay, where are we? What are we missing? Where are we going to go? And they put some things in place, and there's a lot of broad strokes in here that when decisions are being made, they're not necessarily adhering to this plan, but they put a framework in place to create and spur a little bit more growth. Like our downtown core, if I take you through Google Maps, I'll take you to London one day and we'll take a tour around, but you go to our core street, Richmond and Dundas, and it's probably one of the worst areas in London. Historically, always has been. You know, the London plan was put in place to focus on infill and intensification, get businesses to reinvest in the downtown core, clean up Dundas Street. And in the couple of years that this has actually been out, it's given the drive to people like us and other business owners in the city to invest in their buildings. And I can tell you, like, we could walk down Dundas now, where 2 years ago it would be, and I'll choose my words carefully, 90% uncomfortable and 10% business people walking around.
Right.
And now it's probably 60-40 the other way. Like there's been a slew of there's been 6 or 7 buildings in the last year that have sold. All the little parasitic, you know, cash shop places, the smoke shops, the pawn shops, they're all leaving. Like their tenancies are all coming up. They're calling us to quote, you know, bring in office users, retail users. And it's funny how guys like you and me get to see it from the inside. You know, 2 or 3 years before an area starts really picking up, we start seeing the little indications here and there.
Right.
And then a year or 2 from now, everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, can I get a location on that retail place?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's $35 a square foot now. It was 13 2 years ago, but it is what it is, right?" Like, and same thing from a sales perspective, right? Like people, there's a building for sale right now for $350 that likely, if everything continues the way it's continuing, it's gonna be worth $550 in a couple of years, right? But you gotta have a little bit of grit to kind of make that jump and do what you're doing in your area. And, you know, so the Mayo Clinic, as far as like the surrounding area around it, like what are the suburbs surrounding the Mayo Clinic or the areas kind of surrounding it?
So when you say suburbs, we're not the Minneapolis type of atmosphere. What we are is a small city in the sense that anywhere you want to go, you can get there 10, 15 minutes, no problem. But there are what I would say core neighborhoods directly around the Mayo Clinic. So you talk about this increase of rents in downtown because that's where the focus is. This destination medical center is for the visitors, and the visitors are downtown. They're not in the core neighborhoods yet. They're not northwest, northeast. That's where the people live in the community. So
I'll correct myself too, just to cut you off for a second. When I said suburbs, I misspoke. I just meant exactly that, right? Like those neighborhoods that create the framework for Med City and your downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you say Med City because you're seeing it on Snapchat. That's really
yeah, the filter's awesome.
So the core neighborhoods are Slattery, Northrop, Kutsky, Pill Hill, otherwise known as Old Southwest, Sunnyside neighborhoods. And that's really, in my mind, at least I'm super excited for, and I'm investing personally, and I'm getting investors to invest in, is these core neighborhoods, because the downtown district, and we're seeing it, taxes are going up, buildings are selling, foreign investors are buying buildings in downtown, and it's just ultimately leading to small businesses going to be very difficult to exist in the downtown market. And that's unfortunate, right? Because my dad's in small business. My friends are in small business, but it's just kind of the direction that downtown is headed. We'll see if there's any programs that can help offset that. But at this point, it doesn't look like it's getting better anytime soon. So the rents are going up downtown. Now, the positives that I'm seeing as a result of that is these core neighborhoods are starting to have an identity and a sense of community. And I would essentially say it brings it back to when every small little neighborhood had a grocery store, had a gas station, because there wasn't the big boxes. So that's the positive I see. I'll give you a story of, it's called now the Design District, and we came up with that name with my tenants that I'm fortunate to have as tenants, and then a partner that I have. It was a block that sat vacant for a long time, just off of the core of downtown. There were several buildings. There still are a couple buildings sitting vacant. I remember one building specifically I showed 50 times. I couldn't get anybody to buy it. Finally, the stars aligned, and I was able to buy it on a contract for deed. And now today we acquired three other buildings around this building. So we have a little gift shop, home decor. The guy that owns it, it's called Dwell Local. And the guy that owns it, he now is left his job, works full-time at his shop. We got Good Dog Camp, which is a dog training, specialty dog training facility. We got a Beautiful Soul, which is a gift shop. We got a web design company moving in. We got a a floral lady moving in. I sold the building down the block to a guy that's working on European cars, because my pitch to him was, it's close enough to the mail. Your competition's too far out. You can't afford the core because there's no buildings that would really fit you. This is as close as you want to be. Now, the momentum's starting. It's taking a lot of time for people to see that momentum, but that is the first example of what I think these other core neighborhoods are going to have, is this sense of identity, and it's where the small businesses are going to exist. The big thing we need to do as a community is internally, I feel like we need to let the employees know, so then in turn they can tell the visitors. So then ultimately the small businesses can benefit from the visitors going to these core neighborhoods and spending money in their shops. Today, people just exist visitors wise, from what I see in the Skyway and in the subway, and as soon as they walk out, they're like, well, there's nothing going on, so let's just go back to our hotel room. So as our city develops, I'm excited for when that switches and people internally at Mayo say, you got to go check out this little area. And if you like this cool little coffee shop, go over here. And if you like this donut shop, go over here. And by the way, they got these gift stores that are right next to it. So I just feel like we're headed that direction. I wish it could happen tomorrow, but it's not going to happen tomorrow, and it's just going to take time. Everybody has to see that vision. So,
like, there's so many times where I'm on tour with clients, and you probably do the same thing that I do when you're driving around. Like, yeah, you may be going to see a building that you're going to purchase, but as you're driving there, you must just rattle off like, oh, you got to go try this place. And, you know, if you want that, go see this. Like, you almost wish you had more hours in your day so that you could be at the Mayo Clinic running around all day, just telling people about all the stuff that's around. Like, it's an education thing more than anything else, right?
I can't tell you how much I enjoy. I live downtown now, and the sense of community is real downtown. I've never had this sense of community in other places in Rochester, because you go into your house and you kind of know your neighbor, but you don't know anybody else. The sense of community downtown is real. And I so enjoy when I find somebody that's like looking at the map that's in the subway or Skyway. And I'm like, I just literally stop and go, can I help you? And they're always like, yeah, sure. And I love that. I wish I could get paid hourly to give people tours of Rochester. So.
It's tough too, right? Because I mean, like, we speak at a lot of investment seminars. So usually about once a month we go to Toronto or we go to Niagara, and it's the exact same thing where I explain to people what London is, and then we get investors to come invest in our city, because we have some suburbs that are similar to what you're talking about. Old East Village is an interesting story where it used to be called EOA, and EOA in London was always known as a place that you stay away from. You wouldn't go there. Like early 2000s, I'm originally from Montreal. And I came to London in the early 2000s, got a place in EOA right on Queens and Lyle. It was so bad my sister wouldn't come visit me. Like, it was like, I'd come home at night. When I used to work at the restaurant, there'd be prostitutes on the corner, and they'd wave because they'd see my car every night, right? So it'd be like, hey, Justin. And I'd have to tell people I don't actually know them. They just see me because my apartment's on the corner. But there's an interesting story behind Old East Village. So probably about 5 or 6 years ago, when the London Plan came into effect, social media started becoming a big thing. If you go on Facebook and you type in Old East Village Community Association, you'll see one of the most active community associations you've ever seen. They, like, somebody loses a cat, they post a photo and there'll be 35 comments of people helping them find the cat. Somebody vandalizes a building or something like that, they'll give a description or post a picture of it. It's crazy how active it is. So it's now gone from being called EOA to Old East Village. And you have exactly what you're talking about, where the rents and the building values were depressed, that really cool, trendy businesses just opened up shop there because they could get in for, you know, $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month for rent. The Root Cellar is probably one of the best restaurants in London. I'll go there with developers and builders and like politicians and top tier people in the city here. And it's next to one of the, what's known as one of the sketchiest bars in London historically. You know, it's turned into an area where values of homes were 120s and 130s. They're now selling for 170s to 190s. I sold a multifamily that was purchased in 2008 for $280. It was a sixplex. It was a crack house. The guy used a property management company, got each of the tenants out, put about 15 grand in each unit. We just sold it before Christmas for $475. Amazing. And that's 2008 to 2016, right? It's those stories that you really, like, when I go to the investment conferences, I'm super passionate about, because I'm like, you know, these are the areas that you need to look at, because you need to be in ahead of the curve to really make that work, rather than buying in an already appreciated neighborhood where you might find a cash flowing property, but you're going to run into a limit as far as what your equity appreciation is actually going to be, right? So I think we're similar in that we see the areas that, you know, have a lot of potential if the right things start happening in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And the right people get behind it. And then from there, they dedicate their time to making a difference. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on. Thanks for the in-depth conversation about the communities. I'm excited to see where that can go. And I'm excited to learn from your community. And I hope I can give you some value from our community, because that's how we can grow. Let's go on to social. So why does social matter in your community, and how are you using social?
So it's going to touch on a topic that I was going to bring up preview to our last conversation. I've never asked you directly. You know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, I'm assuming?
Either we met because of other realtors or we met because of Gary Vaynerchuk. It was one of the two things, but I live and breathe his.
Yeah, so
I love it.
Exactly, right? And I'm sure that he kind of led us down to this path, and I'm very candid about the fact that I'll reiterate a lot of stuff that he says. Absolutely. But social matters because we're going back to the time where everybody knows everybody, and people want to use a mechanic that they know, and they want to go to a flower person that they know, and it's about people's lives that they do business with versus the big box stores. And I think social's created a framework to bring the communities back together where everybody kind of drifted off in the past 10 years. So social matters to me because I can curate what I see on a daily basis, and I can have interactions that help lift up other people's businesses while being passionate about what I do, forceful, right? Like I put what I put out there. If people want to consume it, that's entirely up to them. I'm happy to provide value. We're getting away from the forced advertising that you see to a place where communities I find are even closer together using the tools that are out there. So Snapchat's a really good example of that, where it's not where I don't care about how many likes I have. I don't care about, you know, how many hearts I have on an Instagram photo. That doesn't mean anything to me. I'd rather have 25 people interact with me on something than, you know, 1,000 people just press a button because it happened to be in the feed. So just going back to
Gary C says, forget about width, worry about deep as far as, you know, the conversations. And he says the same thing. So that's what you're saying.
It's funny, right? Like even this relationship between me and you, like it has grown organically, wasn't forced. And who knows, it could lead to one of my developers here investing millions in Rochester. It could lead to somebody that you have in Rochester because of the Canadian dollar investing in London. Like it's not about getting something from somebody anymore. I think that time is long gone. The best example of that actually I saw last night is when you click on a news article or a YouTube and it comes up with an ad with a 30-second pop-up that forces you to watch it. How quickly do you go away from that? Like you're gone, right? Like you're on another tab, you're on your phone. That's a perfect example of how socials allowed us to curate the world around us versus just being stuck on that train of what people want us to consume, or this is the direction our city's going. It's not like that. Me and you can decide where our city's going because we're actually in the guts of it, you know, working with the businesses around us to make it happen.
So I'll go on to why I think social matters. You hit that perfect. I think a couple additional reasons. I was at my high school I graduated from in 2008, and I was speaking to one of the business classes here last week. And one of the questions came up from the student that said, why don't you just move away? Like you seem like you got all this energy and you're super excited, and you know, why not go to New York or San Francisco? Like, why stay here in Rochester? Because all they're sitting there thinking is Rochester sucks. And I sit there and I laugh and I go, thanks to the internet, I'm not bound to Rochester. I'm not bound to, I got to go to my job and I'm never going to be able to break out of these walls of Rochester. Thanks to the internet and also my passion, all those things. But the internet, this unbelievable tool that I'm fortunate to understand and now hopefully utilize and build on, I am breaking the walls of Rochester related to my life. You know, it's just like this. It's just like this conversation with somebody from Canada. Did my father ever have a conversation online with somebody from Canada about business? No. And so that's the power of the internet is, gosh, the ability to learn, the ability to spread your wings and just figure out life, figure out where you're going to go in your career. And so that's the power of social. Going down to a local level, as far as the power of social, it's awesome to see even the sense of community being established online. I wish more people would get online, whether it be on Twitter or Facebook and certain groups, because then we can continue this conversation of changing our city. And it's starting to happen. The power of social will allow us to build this thing even quicker, because the people that may watch this will see the London plan, and then from there they're going to dig into it, and they're going to talk to the people at DMC who are male employees that are figuring out how this is going to work, and they're going to learn from it. So the power of social on a community level can really matter as well. And we're seeing that start, but it's taking longer than I hope. But that's the way it works.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm going to flip you the PDF for the London plan. I'll share it to you through Google Drive. But like, just, it's crazy to think what a conversation like this can lead to. Like, who knows in 10 or 15 years, if this London plan gets in your hands, they apply it to your city, or it creates a framework, or even one idea gets taken out of it, it can change the whole trajectory of where things are going, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, going down to the next tension graph, I know we talked about it briefly last night. I think that touches on the social as far as where people are actually spending their time, right? Like when they pick up their phone in the morning, what are they checking on? What matters to them? Where do you think the biggest impact is right now? And where do you think it's going to be in another year?
I think for me, the biggest impact has been Snapchat. I'll be honest with you, because I saw Gary Vaynerchuk say, Snapchat's a new thing. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I got on there and started just posting stuff. And then through Twitter, I found a community of realtors that also embrace Snapchat. Those realtors started following me. I started having conversations with them, and that led to you probably. And that has been a change in the way that I am interacting online, and the way that I'm building my business, the way that I'm storytelling, the way I'm preaching to the people in my office of how they need to use the internet. So Snapchat is where it's at if you can get plugged into the community. Like, forget about the people that are on your phone. For majority, I guess in our community, majority of the people don't get Snapchat, and they probably won't. And by the time they do, it's going to be 10 years from now. Now, I hope they do, and I'm happy to teach them. But the people that I'm seeing get Snapchat are these other people of the world that are passionate about their career like myself, and they're building off of it. So Snapchat for me is where the attention is, if you can find that sense of community. And could that change long term? It's like anything, it ebbs and flows. It's going to change. But Snapchat right now, I am also digging Anchor. Gary made a plug for Anchor, and that's allowed me to kind of figure out what it is I like about podcasts. I've always thought about doing podcasts, but I haven't bought the equipment. Anchor's kind of introduced me to that. Same thing Snapchat did for me. Snapchat introduced me to doing YouTube videos, introduced me to doing Google Hangouts, feeling comfortable in doing so. So those are the two tools that I'm like most bullish about, but Snapchat's number one.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? Like, I mean, you talk attention graph in the public. I think, the general public, like when we're trying to reach people, you're still going to see most people on Facebook and Instagram. I think those are just the two easiest ones. I think the early adopters, you're bang on. Like, it's the interactions that you're getting through Snapchat, they're a lot more organic and they're a lot more direct, right? And it's a lot easier to do stuff on the fly because it disappears into the ether, where, a lot of times you overproduce stuff that you put onto Instagram or Facebook because you're worried about, okay, well, this is going to be on the internet. It's going to be there forever, right? So you can't be as candid and transparent with people. And I think people want transparency. They can cut through the BS pretty quick these days. And I think that's where it makes a big difference. I've done 2 deals, 2 actually closed transactions through Snapchat, and I've gotten 3 new listings because of it, just because I happened to be somewhere and people didn't realize that we did what we did, right? So it is what it is, and I'm glad it's heading in that direction. But you're right, like, it's going to change. The flavor of the week's going to be different next week and the week after. Anchor I actually downloaded the other day. I haven't had too much time to play with it yet, and I'm that guy that I'll play with it and then it'll disappear. I had Snapchat like 2 years ago, and I only started using it again right around December, January, kind of when we met. Just a quick jump to one more point, and I think we'll wrap this up because I know you got to get somewhere. I got to get somewhere as well too. Yep. We'll continue this conversation another time. But so, what's your specialty?
Specialty is commercial real estate. That's what I focus on.
Okay.
I think, just adding to my Snapchat, I think the main thing for me is we're in a market that the brokers that have come up in this market, they don't have necessarily one specific thing they do, like leasing office or selling investment properties. I think as they grow older, then they've got into their niche. Like I think one guy, all he does is sell large properties, but he's had to work his tail off to get to that level. Commercial real estate for me is just my niche, my focus. And that covers how I started leasing out small offices to now medium-sized offices to large offices to now fortunately being able to sell investment properties. I'm developing a team that does the whole gamut of commercial real estate, but we are focused on commercial real estate. We sold a bunch of multifamilies last year, single family rentals. We've sold large investment properties. It's anything related to commercial real estate. That's me, and that's Realty Growth, the company that I'm fortunate to be a partner of.
Yeah, I got a good term for you too that you can use kind of here on in. We call it focus diversification. London's that same kind of market where you can niche down if you want to and only do one thing, but it's a small enough market where you can kind of pick a few different complementary things so that, you know, in the grand scope of things, like from an investment perspective, I explain this to people when we talk at the conferences, you know, the commercial real estate component of it impacts the, you know, the retail and commercial component of the businesses that are going around. So you bring an office to a location, that's going to naturally require retail to support it. And then once that's there, the residential real estate around it gets brought up, which brings the investors, right? So when you have a couple of different facets all working together at the same time, you can do what you're talking about and go to an area that's depreciated and change the whole scope of it within, you know, a 2 to 10 year timeline, depending on how excited you can get the community about that area, right? So like in London, so because of the beach communities, one of our niches is actually beachfront properties. That's my wife's side of the business. She does a lot of the residential side of the business. And then we do a lot of commercial sales, leasing, and then tenant representation. Now, another question I had for you, do you focus on dealing with the landlords or do you deal with the tenants, or how does that work?
Right now we focus on both within Realty Growth. Our vision is within our team, we can have somewhat of a focus of saying who's best suited for the job and then putting the person that's best suited for the job in the lead position to handle that client. But I do see us long-term focusing more on the tenants and buyers and less on the listings, which is unique for commercial real estate. But I think that's where it's at. And that's where we've decided to probably spend our marketing dollars and our time long-term. And I look forward to that to see what it can lead to. Yeah.
So I guess I got to ask you just to make sure that I cover this point. How is business at Realty Growth?
It's growing. That's all I can say.
I'm just waiting for G to come out of the back corner and then just give us a little double guns or something like that.
So for all the people that tuned in and all the people that are going to tune in, follow us on our social media. My name is Bucky Beeman, Bucky Beeman. I'm on Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram. But if you want to see the real me, Snapchat is where I'm at. Where are you at, Justin?
Same thing. It's at The Closers Team with an S. So TheClosersTeam. Same name on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. I mean, Snapchat's our #1 right now. You can check us out on YouTube as well. I'm sure we'll post all the links. We'll get better at this too, as far as like integrating everything into the show. I think, you know, something me and Bucky want to say is it's something that Gary Vee always says is the community is what's gonna be your oxygen, right? That's his saying. I like to tell people that the feedback is my jet fuel, and it makes me excited to just get out there and actually give more value. I know Bucky does it all day long. I watch his videos all the time. The wheelchair ones kill me all the time when I see the abandoned wheelchairs in Mid-City. You know, we don't hear a lot back from individual clients, so it's always nice to hear, you know, when you get it from a roundabout way, you get a compliment on some of the work that you're doing, or, you know, I really like this piece of content, or I didn't know that was happening in this area. I think the more that our community gives back to us, the more we can give back to our community. And that said, people in our community, if, you know, you're on Twitter, you're on any of these social media platforms, throw your name into the comments. We'll definitely follow you. We'll give you a shout out, see if we can get you guys some more followers and just build that global village of like-minded people. So we appreciate the time that you guys took to watch this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope to have some guests on here, people that are just as passionate or have different niches, and learn from them. So that's that sense of community. I'm here to learn. I'm not here to preach. And so I need everybody else's involvement. And thank you, Justin. Thank you for your time and reaching out and just saying, let's do it. I mean, that's what it took. And we did it. And now it's only going to grow from here.
There you go, buddy. All right. We'll talk soon. Take care,
awesome.
brother.
Sell something today.
Okay. See you. Bye.